Leo, Lovel. We always came down here to the coast to go trout fishing. I always loved to eat at Spring Creek Restaurant. This was back in the 60s. And then befriended one of the managers of the restaurant. And I was in business in Tallahassee, and she came in one day and said, they're going to sell the restaurant down at Spring Creek. So we bought the restaurant. I was a partner, my mother was a partner, my father was a partner, my grandmother was a partner. Daddy and I still had our jobs in town. But I started commercial fishing, catching mullet, selling the restaurant. Before it was over with, we had stone crab traps, we had an offshore boat. We group fished for 3 days offshore at the time. We raised soft-shell crabs. We caught jellyfish for the state and processed those. We have probably caught and sold everything that swims within 100 miles of here. And we sent soft crabs, blowfish tails, sea bass, grunts, octopus, amberjack, pompano, mackerel, bluefish, mullet, scallops at one time. When you think about it, it's what this area produces as far as nature's bounty is incredible.
That house, I can't tell you too much about. Now, the house right next to it is a very interesting place. It used to be the Willis store. One of the most unusual features it has is if you go in it and go into the kitchen, it's 2 oak stumps. Each stump is this big around. They stand about that high in the kitchen. They're painted, last time I saw them, which was 20 years ago, they were painted bright red, and they used that for their table. I imagine when that house was built, which was probably back in the 20s, 30s, they just didn't have equipment to handle. They cut the tree down, but they didn't have equipment to handle the stumps, so they just cut the trees down, cut them off fairly even, and built the house around the stumps. The other place was a residence. The Spears family owned just about all of that, and still do. So,
if you're driving down this road, if you look straight ahead toward the water, there's a large house at the end.
But that's the original Spears house. It was actually built by the Langston family, probably in the 20s or the 30s. But there's nobody left really doing it. I mean, I think Lee Allen is rock bass and grunt fishing and running stone crab traps, and Mitch still running a few stone crab traps. And then we've got us that produce what little we produce for the restaurant, and that's it. That whole culture and lifestyle went out in 1995. The backbone of this place has just been stripped away over the last 20 years. It was taken little by little to begin with. When I say that, they closed the bay out here to us shrimping in our little bay boats. Then they took the scallop industry and made that a recreational industry where they can no longer be commercially harvested. And then they closed most of this area to oystering out here. And then the net ban came along in 1995, which really finished it off, is about what it amounts to, because that's what this community really was. It's just a collection of just some of the everyday events that used to happen around here when this was a big commercial fishing town. It's the result of realizing at a point in your life that you got to do a lot of stuff a lot of people don't even know anything about or even exists, and I thought it would be kind of interesting to record some of it and share some of it. What people don't understand, not in the fishing business, is it's not like if you're a mechanic and you work on cars, that's what you do for a living, or a state worker that you go into an office and do the same job all year long. In the fishing industry, really to survive, you've got to be able to go from gill net fishing for mullet in the winter to pompano fishing for a short period of time in the spring to crabbing to scallops when they come in. You're always shifting to the fish, crab, or shrimp of opportunity at the time.
Everything's connected together. A fish falls out of the net, or some kind of fish that you can't sell or do anything with dies in the net, or yet you kill it getting it out of the net and it goes overboard. It's not going to be wasted. Most of the time it's consumed before you even leave the spot by a pelican or a crab. Just how everything out there works together, how the fresh water coming out of the St. Martin Wakulla River combining with the salt water makes a perfect brackish environment that soft-shell crabs and shrimp have to reproduce in. If you don't have a certain amount of fresh, you don't have any oysters. If you have too much salt, it kills the oysters. It's just the opposite with clams. Clams can't have any fresh. All they can have is salt, or it kills them. And it's all right here together. We've been restricted down so far that you can't make a living legally. And there's some families here that know this lesson all too well, and we learned it the hard way too. You can bend the rules, like using an illegal net that you keep hidden in the woods, and you have to run every time you hear a boat or you see a light. You have to drop what you're doing and go hide. And then when they catch you, the fines are horrendous. The attorney fees are outrageous. They break you financially. I can remember the day when we pulled up under the boat shed, my oldest son and I, it was raining. We'd been fishing, we had been running for weeks. And that day had been particularly harassing. We'd been checked a couple of times, almost caught a couple of times, and we pulled in the rain and we just sat there. And we said, you know what, this is over. We can't do this anymore. And went on to other things. And we're real connected with the water and the bay. That's part of what Spring Creek Restaurant is. But if you're lucky enough to get to record Mr. Linnell and Miss Irene, talk to the Barwick boys, if you're lucky enough to record some of that, you're going to be catching something and preserving it that's fixing to be gone.